Hello and welcome to Unit 4 Opener number 9, where we'll be delving a little bit deeper into solving some quadratic equations and some absolute value equations. Now, if we take a look at this first equation here, x minus 7, the quantity squared, equals 64. The first thing to acknowledge is that we are not allowed to just add 7 to both sides and get rid of that 7. That's not something you can do. And the reason is because this 7 is also being squared here. Okay, so we can't just add 7 and get rid of it. So unfortunately we'll deal with this in another way. What we can do though is essentially we're using the order of operations in reverse here, and we're going to attempt to get rid of this exponent. So instead of getting rid of this thing that's inside the parentheses first, we're going to get rid of this exponent first. Okay, so what we can do is take the square root of both sides. Again, the square root of a quantity squared, this is something we talked about in the last video in opener number 8, is not just that quantity. So we did the square root of x minus 7 squared, and what you get is not just x minus 7, you get the absolute value of x minus 7. And it is equal to the square root of 64, which is 8. Well, if if the absolute value of x minus 7 equals 8, that means that x minus 7 could equal 8, or x minus 7 could equal negative 8. Again, if you're unsure why I'm setting this equal to 8 and negative 8 here, why don't you go back and take a look at opener number 8, where we discussed the idea of solving these absolute value equations. By the way, not everyone writes out this step in the middle. Some people wouldn't have even written that step out. They jumped straight to x minus 7 equals 8 and x minus 7 equals negative 8, and they solve from there. In any case, from here, solving is fairly simple. We're just going to add 7 to both sides and get x equals 15. Or, on the other side, when we add 7 to both sides, we get x equals negative 1. So one thing that's worth noticing when we solve this quadratic, a lot of people think the answers always come out to be opposites of each other. So a lot of people, once they get this 15, they just think the other one has to be negative 15, and they put the answer down right away. Of course, that's not true. So do solve the problem out entirely and make sure you get a reasonable answer. We could also go back and check these answers, and if you take a minute and do so, you'll see both of them do work in the original equation. Okay, and now on to part B. This one is just the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 7. Again, it would be illegal to try to add 3 to both sides right now, because this isn't just a 3. This 3 is inside of an absolute value, so there's more going on here. So what we have to do first is remove these absolute values. And as we talked about in opener number 8, the way we can remove these is to write this as two separate equations. X minus 3 equals 7 is the one possibility, but then there's the other possibility that x minus 3 is equal to negative 7. And we just solve these two equations separately, so I'll add 3 to both sides and get x equals 10. And here again, I'll add 3 to both sides and get x equals negative 4. So again, the big idea here, I think, is that when you're solving quadratics or when you're solving absolute value equations, you need to pay attention and make sure that at some point in the solving, two answers may crop up. And the reason is because absolute value is referring to a distance from 0, and that distance could go in two different directions. So you might get two different answers when you're doing those types of problems.